If you're writing a screenplay, odds are you're making at least one of these 6 dialogue mistakes. Any one of them on their own can ruin your entire screenplay. I know that because after 8 years of writing my own screenplays, let's just say I made a couple of those mistakes myself. So in this video, I'm going to show you what these mistakes are, how you can avoid them, and how to write dialogue that actually serves your story. Mistake number 1 will serve as the foundation for every other mistake in this video. It's something so many screenwriters forget about, yet it's probably the single most important factor to writing great dialogue. Imagine you're at the beach and you see a shark fin. You don't need to wait. As soon as you see that, you're booking it. But why? I mean, it's just a fin, right? It's not about the fin. It's about what the fin implies. When you see a shark fin, it doesn't take a lot for you to figure out that it means that there's a shark underneath it. Without actually seeing it, you can infer the body, the tail, and the hundreds of teeth that are attached to that fin. When it comes to your story, this is the most essential element. If you know how to show your readers the fin, they'll be able to figure it out for themselves that there's a shark. You only have to give your readers the most minimal, surface level information if you're careful about what it implies. You don't need to say, hey, be careful, I think there might be a shark there. And this is what's known as subtext, the details that lie beneath the surface. If you just told them everything they needed to know, they'd have no reason to watch your movie. It'd be like handing them a puzzle that you already finished for them. So if your character is a cop, you don't need him to walk in and announce, hello, I am a police officer. You can just have him walk in and wearing a police uniform, and the audience will probably be able to figure out the rest for themselves. This next mistake will stop your dialogue from having any purpose. Take a look at this scene from the movie 5 Easy Pieces.
I'd like a plain omelet, no potatoes on the plate, a cup of coffee, and a side order of wheat toast.
I'm sorry, we don't have any side orders of toast I'll give you of.
Okay, I'll make it as easy for you as I can. I'd like an omelet, plain, and a chicken salad sandwich on wheat toast. No mayonnaise, no butter, no lettuce, and a cup of coffee.
Number 2, chicken salad sandwich. Hold the butter, the lettuce, the mayonnaise, and a cup of coffee. Anything else?
Yeah, now all you have to do is hold the chicken, bring me the toast, give me a check for the chicken salad sandwich, and you haven't broken any rules.
Throughout the entire scene, Jack Nicholson's character is hell-bent on one thing, getting his toast. Every single line he says somehow traces back to this, and he does everything he can to try and maneuver the waitress into getting it for him. What makes this dialogue and every other line of dialogue that has ever existed work so well is that he has a clear goal. But the problem is, a lot of writers aren't even aware of what their character's goals are. If every line your character says doesn't somehow trace back to this goal, they'll have no reason for anything they're saying. Otherwise, it's just a random person saying a bunch of random things. If your character wants a girlfriend, then there's probably going to be a scene where he has to go and talk to a girl. Everything he says in that scene should be his way of going about getting this girl. The dialogue is what shows us your particular character's particular methods of going about this particular goal. For instance, maybe he's super confident and has no problem just going up and asking for a number right there. But on the other side, he could be peeing his pants and say absolutely nothing. But that still counts as dialogue. It doesn't necessarily mean he's actually moving towards his goal, but in his head, he's doing everything he believes he can. This is where you can really take advantage of subtext. As soon as you give your character a goal, it reframes everything that happens afterwards. So to someone who's never met this character before, they might assume that he's peeing his pants because he's nervous to talk to this girl. But if the audience has known him for longer, they might already know that he's not nervous at all. He just has a bladder infection and pee sometimes comes out of him. This gets even trickier when you have multiple characters because a lot of writers prioritize their main character so much that they just forget about everyone else. But they need to have goals too. By the way, if you feel like you're struggling with these mistakes in your own dialogue, click the link below if you want me to directly give you feedback on your story. Which brings me to mistake number 3. Missing this is like missing the heart of your screenplay. It's what keeps it alive and actually makes it worth reading. Because without it, no one is going to care about whether your character achieves his goal or not. Otherwise, they're just having conversations. And your goal with dialogue is not to capture real-life conversation, only the most interesting parts of it. But what are the most interesting parts? You can't just show 2 characters yelling at each other. That's not an engaging argument. It goes deeper than that. One great example is in The Dark Knight. All Batman wants to do is keep order in Gotham, but the Joker wants a complete opposite. He wants to unleash as much chaos as he possibly can.
I'll show you. when the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
These opposing goals serve as the foundations for every single bit of conflict between these two. Everything Batman says is regarding his goal of saving Gotham, and everything Joker says has to do with him wreaking havoc over Gotham. Your characters should have goals that conflict with one another. That way, the dialogue is actually leading them somewhere. The way you do this is by starting with your protagonist. Figure out what his goal is, and then make everyone else's goal somehow conflict with his. And remember, this doesn't mean that your characters need to blatantly say their goal out loud every time they're speaking. It just means that in that moment, whatever goal they're working towards, they should be saying something that they believe will move them closer towards that goal. Mistake number 4 is exposition. And I don't just mean cut out exposition altogether, because there are moments when exposition is important. It's just about how you present it. Let's say 2 characters are going to get food, and one of them suggests going to McDonald's. So the other character says, "Really? McDonald's? I'd expect a little bit more from the president of the United States." Come on. If you want to show that your character is the president, there are so many better ways to do this. First, there's the obvious show don't tell rule, where you just show them in the Oval Office. But we're talking about dialogue here. So how would you reveal your character is president through dialogue without it being so obvious? You guessed it. Subtext. A great example of how to do this is an Aaron Sorkin screenplay for The American President.
Maria.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. They tell you I'm going to need the
Overall
consumers.
consumer spending and not just first homes. We'll have free in 15 minutes.
Thanks.
Mr. President, I really feel we
Louis,
need to
however
focus
much coffee you drink in the morning, I want you to reduce it by half.
I don't drink coffee, sir.
Hit yourself over the head with a baseball bat, would you please?
Yes, sir.
Happy birthday, Laura.
Laura, happy birthday.
Thank you, sir.
I should send her some flowers.
You already did, sir.
Everything that's happening makes it very clear right off the bat that this man is the president. You have Secret Service agents, people walking around telling him when his next events are and calling him Liberty. And by the time someone does say, "Good morning, Mr. President," we're well aware of who he is. And yeah, I know the movie's called The American President, but the point is no one comes up to him and says, "Well, you are the president of the United States, so because of that," it's done in a way that actually feels natural. And I know how obvious this sounds, but that's why a lot of writers struggle with exposition. They complicate it. They make it this huge thing "Oh, well, I'd better tell the audience that this is the president of the United States or they're just not going to understand it." No. Just think about a situation the president would be in and put him in that situation. I saw a great quote about this. It was actually on a Reddit comment, and it said that bad dialogue is anything that's said because the writer wanted to say it instead of the character. And you can tell the difference between forced exposition and when it's actually done well. It really just comes down to your characters. Would they really be saying what they are saying in this moment, or is it just convenient for you? It's tricky because it doesn't feel obvious when you're writing it, but say it out loud and you'll realize. It's almost as bad as mistake number 5, which I'm sure you've heard of, on-the-nose dialogue. This one kind of goes hand in hand with exposition, but not quite, because the thing about on-the-nose dialogue is that it's your characters saying how they feel. "I'm happy about this," or "I'm scared because of this," rather than just showing us.
You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me feel angry.
If we apply the show don't tell rule, the way to go about this would just be to find a situation where the character experiences this emotion. He sees a dead body, so he screams. Show don't tell, right? But again, how do you apply this rule to dialogue itself? I was explaining this to someone in my coaching program last week, and what I told them was that this is usually done when your characters do everything they can to hide their emotions. Let's say you have a group of kids going into a haunted house. All of them are very excited to see what's inside, except one of them. We'll call him Brandon, and Brandon has serious anxiety problems. He can't even leave the house without needing his Xanax. But at the same time, he doesn't want his friends to hate him, so he chooses to appease them and do what they want rather than speak up. When they all get to the haunted house, they tell Brandon he has to go in first, and that's when all these things come together. His goals are in direct conflict with the other characters. He wants to stay safe, but he also wants to be on their good side. He doesn't want to let them know that he's scared, so he walks towards the house and he says things like, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. It's easy. He's not going to turn around and say, "Actually, guys, I I'm very nervous right now, and even though I want you to like me, I don't think it's a very good idea for me to go inside. No, he's not going to do that. His dialogue, him not saying those things, are exactly what's going to get this point across. It comes from the same thing with exposition. A lot of writers worry that their audience just won't get it, but they will. You need to stop trying so hard to make your audience understand. It's important, but you can dial it back and just let them read between the lines a little bit. Finally, there's mistake number 6, which I like to call preaching. If you're writing a screenplay, odds are there's some key lesson you want your audience to learn about life. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the whole point of telling a story. But the problem is when you try to teach them that lesson explicitly through dialogue. A lot of writers just have their characters blatantly say this lesson out loud, and they use their dialogue as nothing but vessels for their own opinions. And the trouble there is it goes directly against the first point, subtext. Your audience doesn't want you to beat them over the head with your message stick. They want to figure it out for themselves. If you just tell them what they need to learn, you don't leave any room for them to come to their own conclusion. This is what the writer of Finding Nemo meant when he said, don't give them 4, give them 2 + 2. But how are you supposed to do this? Let's say you're writing a movie about how bad drugs are. So you have a bunch of characters who are just constantly talking about not using drugs. But that's not the right way to go about it. It just makes the audience feel like they're at an anti-drug seminar. Instead, you want to, once again, show and don't tell. And you do this through the story. Maybe your main character is a drug addict. It's not effective just to have everyone talk about how dangerous drugs are. We know this. Instead, show the life of someone on drugs. Show how it affects their life from a neutral perspective. Get your opinion out of it. If you depict a character who's struggling with a drug problem and he loses his closest relationships, he becomes extremely unhealthy, and he overdoses, they're gonna get the message. But if you're just whispering in their ear over and over, drugs are bad, like Mr. Mackey from South Park, it's not gonna sit well.
And as for drugs, well, drugs are bad. You shouldn't do drugs. Okay, that about wraps up my introduction.
It's gonna happen from them witnessing the emotional turmoil that your character goes through as a result of the drugs. Now that you know the dialogue mistakes that are holding your screenplay back, the next step is learning how to elevate your dialogue to a whole new level. If you want to write dialogue that pulls the readers in and makes your characters unforgettable, then watch this video next. I break down the exact techniques you need to transform your dialogue from flat and forgettable to sharp, compelling, and effortlessly natural. Click here to check it out.